content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to Headliners. In just a moment, I will be going through tomorrow's newspapers with my two favourite comedian guests. But first, here's the news with Polly.
Good evening. Our top story tonight, Chelsea FC owner Roman Abramovich and at least two Ukrainian peace negotiators are reported to have suffered from what's being called a suspected poisoning. The Wall Street Journal says the incident happened following a meeting in Kyiv in Ukraine early this month. The US newspaper says the Russian oligarch suffered symptoms including sore eyes and peeling skin. Here, the Foreign Secretary says Vladimir Putin's forces are abducting Ukrainian politicians, activists and journalists as Russia fails to meet its military targets. Liz Truss called it an abhorrent tactic. Meanwhile, Mariupol city's mayor estimates around 160,000 people are still trapped in the city without heating or electricity. Ms. Truss re-emphasised the need to stop President Putin.
We know that Putin is not serious about talks. He is still wantonly bombing innocent citizens across Ukraine. And that is why we need to do more to ensure that he loses and we force him to think again. We need to ensure that any future talks don't end up selling Ukraine out or repeating the mistakes of the past.
Ms. Truss. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden says he's not concerned that his comments about Vladimir Putin being removed from power could escalate the conflict in Ukraine or that it would complicate diplomacy.
I want to make it clear, I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it. What complicates the situation at the moment is the escalatory efforts of Putin to continue to engage in carnage, the kind of behavior that makes the whole world say, my God, what is this man doing?
Joe Biden. Well, here the Chancellor has been accused of doing very little for those who are out of work and relying on benefits. But giving evidence to the Treasury Select Committee, Rishi Sunak defended his spring statement, saying it would have been irresponsible for the government to have borrowed more to raise benefits in the face of rising inflation. Entertainment news, and the Academy in LA has launched a formal review after the actor Will Smith hit the host Chris Rock during the Oscars last night.
Oh, wow!
That incident happened when the host made a joke about the actor's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, and it happened just minutes before Will Smith picked up Best Actor for his role in King Richard. The Conservative MP Dehenna Davison told GB News she's written an open letter to the actor about the incident.
I think it's understandable wanting to defend your loved ones. And actually, in a way, that's very much why I set up this all-party group, because the reason I'm so passionate about this issue is because my own father was killed by a single punch. But there are ways to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for your loved ones without resorting to violence and without resorting to the sort of act we saw from Will Smith. And that's what I really want to raise awareness of there, that violence is not the answer.
Dehenna Davison. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight are the eminently punchable Scott Capurro and Nick Dixon. No, I'm kidding, gentlemen, and it's not even a laughing matter. But how are you? Are you well?
Feeling bruised by that remark, but I'm okay.
Bruised by your countrymen's despicable and disreputable behaviour.
What a punchline, seriously. What an effect. I mean, amazing swipe. And also, we just saw it again. He does slap him very hard.
We mustn't delve too quickly into that story because obviously it's going to be defining our first third. So we mustn't anticipate. Are you all right, Nick? Are you feeling?
Well, yeah. No one's hit me in the last few days.
No kind of weird stinging, no stinging in the ear.
It's hard to believe.
I haven't been hit like that since I last visited Edinburgh. So let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Daily Mail, which has William, I'll end royal era of never explain. It's an interesting, strange headline. And their photograph is of William and Kate. The next one is party... What have we got here? Daily Telegraph, Partygate fines to be issued from today. And there is what is going to become a very familiar photograph of Mr. Smith cracking Chris Rock one across the chops. Abramovich poisoned during Ukraine talks. That is the Independent with the familiar photograph, the slap that overshadowed the Oscars. The Guardian goes with Ukraine peace talks resume amid claims Abramovich was poisoned. A slightly different one of the number of, there was obviously a full frame spin-off from that slapping incident. There are a whole kind of range you could make a flip book out of the front pages this morning. The Financial Times runs with Britons face historic shock to incomes. Bank of England governor warns. That's always bad news. On the other hand, the Bank of England governor warned that house prices were going to fall by 30% a couple of years ago, I seem to remember. Sunak dampens hope of more help with energy bills, and Abramovich poisoned at talks. Those headlines dominate the Times front pages. And they've got two photographs you can make and top and tail the entire incident there. The I paper goes with Johnson and Sunak row goes nuclear, and Roman Abramovich poisoned during peace talks. The Metro runs with Duke back on parade as Duke of York makes his first public appearance, and Will Biff, which is a fairly brief summary of what happened. And lastly, Abramovich poisoned at peace talks. That's from the Daily Star. They have Vlad's War and also Al Jazeera's I'm Quitting Strictly and Feud that kicked off at Oscars. Those are the headlines. Let's take a look inside. So, Nick, you get to lay out the turf for the show. I would imagine most stand-up comedians are going to be having to be addressing this story at the beginning of their sets in the next few days.
Yeah, it's an honour. Well, but it's unique for me, of course, because I have worked with Will Smith, and he was very, very nice to me. Only slapped me once, but I deserved it, frankly. And,
serious? Will Smith, not the British comedian.
No,
Will Smith.
I thought it was going to be him. Yeah. I was very surprised it was the Will Smith.
Yeah.
So I worked on the Aladdin movie, the one where he was the genie.
Right.
Of course, and just helping with some writing. And he was very nice to me, I have to say. So it gives me no pleasure to say anything negative about Mr. Smith. But my theory, I've got a couple of theories on this. One is that he had that quite humiliating Red Table video where his wife basically explained her infidelities while Will sort of sat there nodding awkwardly. One theory is that he's just enraged by that, and he was humiliated by the internet and the world. Now he wants to sort of overreact. That was one theory I had. My other one was that he's actually just a bit scared of his wife. Because if you look at it, he's laughing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Perhaps awkwardly, but he is laughing.
He seems to find it funnier than it is, actually. It's not actually a great joke, is it? It's okay, but he seems to be laughing too much in this.
Yeah, he's playing along.
He's playing along, but then she looks really moody. Then it cuts away for a couple of seconds, and in those couple of seconds, he suddenly turns into like an MK Ultra assassin, just going for the target. You know, like she's activated his microchip. He suddenly goes. I wonder if in those moments, did she say something? Did she give him a sort of...
You want me to cheat again? She whispered in his ear, and then he got out of his chair.
Right, so are you not going to do anything? You know, did you say something like that? That's my theory.
Is it any wonder I have a series of
Right,
boyfriends?
something like that.
The guy with the tattooed throat would go after him. That's what she said.
Yeah.
Not to blame it.
Cap in his ass.
Not to blame it solely on her, because of course you can't assault someone like that. And if you could punch people for off-colour jokes, Scott would be getting punched every night. So
it occurred to me, you know, there's none of us would probably escaped whipping by this point.
Right. Although I would ask this: is there a time, let's say in a bar, or a soft play area, when it is right to slap someone who insults your wife? You know, it's probably not the time to do it at the opposite.
In a soft play area.
I just threw that in. Like you might be a dad, you know, but there might be an insult. You might have to. I don't know.
I think a lot of people think comedians deserve it half the time. That's why they're not going after, you know, the host. I think a lot of the public feels like, well, he asked for it, didn't he?
They have. The thing is, they've been asking for it for years, because Gervais has been asking for it on the most sort of obvious level. It doesn't feel to me like Chris Rock is the number one target here.
The thing is, the Academy Awards, they've turned into a roast, haven't they? Because the lower the lower the attendance and the viewing figures get, the larger the egos, no longer the speeches. Yeah. And they're looking for some sort of shock and awe moment, and they got one.
Well, there's some people think it's all a fix, although it didn't look like a fix, did it? Unless Smith really does deserve the Oscar, because his face was contorted.
Brilliant.
With fury.
Yeah, that seems incredibly unlikely for a few reasons. One, the reaction seems so real, and two, what would be the gain from it? I mean, it's been damaging.
All this.
Well, yeah, but it's damaging for Will Smith. It's damaging for Chris Rock.
They both
Chris
come
Rock
out
came
ahead,
out
don't
okay.
they? Well, Rock's numbers have gone up ticket-wise for his national tour.
Oh, I would definitely say Rock
up.
came out. I actually seriously felt a lot of him. I was slightly in awe of the degree to which he held it together. If you've ever been punched in public, it's very hard.
And there's been rumours about Smith's true sexuality in Hollywood for decades.
Right.
And this puts a cap, as you say, on those two. I feel bad for Liza. Yeah. You see her in a wheelchair. I think he punched her before she went out there too. I just think he's an angry man. He's taking it out on everybody.
He's
Poor
definitely struggling with his emotions.
So you're taking advantage of the fact we have no studio audience. Come up and topple you from your stool. Scott, you've got the top story from Tuesday's Guardian, which is, I think it's fair to say, the other main story here. This is about Abramovich.
Roman Abramovich. The claim is that he was poisoned while in Kiev. Yeah. He and some Ukrainian negotiators, two others, reported being ill in their hotel when they got back from a meal. They'd all eaten the same chocolate and drank the same water, and they think that's how the poison might have been transmitted. They had the
was it like a ricin type thing, or
they're not quite sure. It must have been some sort of powder, but they're having the same symptoms of watery eyes, very painful watery eyes, and skin peeling from their hands and their face.
So it's like an irritant rather than a fatal dose.
It was a warning, apparently.
Was it? Okay.
To other people trying to negotiate a peaceful ending to this.
I get that
thing.
from my own dog sometimes. We have a golden retriever, and it has a certain kind of dander that it seems to get into your eyes.
Dog's a warning,
sometimes.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, my wife's warning me.
Yeah, she is. She's taking it on
you.
You
take it seriously, Nick, or do you think
well,
it's...
it is a lesson for all the kids watching at home that want to be billionaire oligarchs. It is tough at the top. You've got this sort of Shakespearean level of threat from poisoning. But I would note, they made the mistake when Tyson Fury went to fight Klitschko in his own backyard, as he famously said, they didn't drink any of the water. They went and bought it at a shop miles down the road. They knew there'd be dirty tricks. They didn't trust anything. They made him change the ring. So what they've done here, even eating chocolate and water is not safe. So that was a mistake they made.
Well, you're absolutely right. It is very much like Tudor England, isn't it, or something? I was reading a book about Queen Elizabeth I and the lengths she had to go to avoid being poisoned. She would never accept any gift from any sort of visitor.
I was surprised they made themselves that vulnerable.
And you need a series of tasters, don't you? Really?
Yeah, and she wouldn't put on clothes that had been brought to her. She kept a sword by the side of her bed. It does feel a little bit like Russians live in that same
also,
way.
I think the Russians are saying we're willing to use chemical weapons on anyone, even our own citizens, obviously, even oligarchs who are close to Putin.
Well, that has actually been, to be fair to Putin, if this is fair, that has been the primary target of most of his misbehaviour over the years.
But they're they're confidants, and it does make me wonder if Putin's actually pulling the strings or someone else. Obviously, there's other people involved in the planning of this, but I don't know whose strategy is taking precedent.
Abramovich is having a bad year. I mean, 12 months ago, it was okay, wasn't it?
To be him.
Chelsea were doing well.
Not so great now. His face is peeling off.
His money's all locked up. We'll be coming more to sanctioned oligarchs later as well. They reappear. This is a follow-up, I think, to a very similar story we had last week. I think this is back with you, Nick, a government minister setting out tonal guidelines for teaching about the British Empire, good, bad, indifferent.
Yeah, Nadim Zahawi says children should be taught about the benefits of the British Empire and warns teachers should leave their political views outside the classroom. That would be nice. So this is what we have. We occasionally now from the Conservative Party will have an occasional Conservative statement, and everyone will get very excited that they've thrown us a bone, you know, in this very liberal world. And so he's given us this. And it's a fair point. He said that he talks about his own background of his parents fleeing Iraq because of Saddam Hussein. And he said there was a legacy there of the British civil service system, which actually served the country incredibly well for many decades. And that's the sort of thing children should learn about. He's saying that it should be taught in a neutral way. And I tend to agree. I mean, you know, our empire, we're taught that we're totally evil, but of course, one could argue what was unique about it is actually that it was relatively benign, and we enjoy good relations with former colonies.
Certainly, the creation of the Commonwealth was a real success, wasn't it? But I mean, I don't know.
The Irish might not agree with you. You know, the thing is,
I was taught in the 70s. You were taught, I'm guessing, what, like 90s or something. But Scott, you were taught in America, which is a significant.
Yeah.
How is the British Empire taught in America? Is it taught at all?
Can I just tell you this? That I have friends who are from Massachusetts, who still say the redcoats rock through our gardens.
Yeah.
Some people haven't forgotten.
No.
And they see the benefits of the UK, as slim and minor as they are, on the international world stage, but they don't see the point in resisting or denying history, which I feel when I talk or hear from right-wing British politicians, there's this need or desire to sort of kind of play over or kind of dim the lights on what actually happened.
But it would, well, I don't know about dimming. It could be taught neutrally, couldn't it? It's the question of applying value. I don't feel like I was taught value judgments one way or the other. Just certain incidents were referenced, but it was made quite clear. We had a thing that was known as the Indian Mutiny. Now, that term in itself might suggest that the rule under which they were suffering was legitimate before they mutinied, but still, I remember the way we were taught it, the facts were laid out before us.
I wonder how many
it wasn't like these dastardly Indians rose up against their well-meaning, you know.
You know, I think you're an adorable nation, but I wonder how many students are actually aware that France and the UK, you know, drew up the borders that make up Iraq and Syria and the other countries in that area now. I mean, I just think, yes, of course. It's only interesting if you teach, and there are many sides, not just two.
Yeah.
It's only interesting if you teach all of it, you know, and then you understand more why things happen.
There is something, and I'll ask you this, Nick, that to be said about teaching history in a way that makes it stick. That's the trick, isn't it? You can teach it good, bad, or indifferent in terms of the morality of the actions that were that defined the era. But if you don't find individual stories, if you don't create human interest...
Well, people like Starkey are the master of that, although he struggled a bit when he was sent into that tough school, but he's the master of making it personal. That's what we need to do. But, yeah, we have to teach both sides. Even Scots agreed with us, despite dissing the UK while on GBNews, which I always find a strange choice.
It just shows how diverse the range of opinions we have on this show, including one that hates us.
You know, I really admire, and I really do admire the British educational system, obviously. Well. I mean, my higher education was here in the UK, but I do also wonder if young people are able to access the information that they want while they're in school and don't just have to kind of look around and beg for it. You know, I just don't like going after teachers because I think the job they do is incredibly difficult.
It is. I would probably hand out a bunch of Flashman novels, I think, in order to teach the Empire. That would be the best way to do it. Maybe Carry On films.
It is true. No, you're right. I mean, Gore Vidal's a great fictional historian, and those novels are brilliant, and they really lure people in.
Yeah. Scott, this comes back to you now, and knowing how much you hate children, I imagine you have an interesting take on this one.
You know, I don't hate them. I just don't notice them. But I know my husband doesn't know how to talk to them, and even is interested in spending time. It's weird to me. And apparently, mothers and babies have joined in a protest against the UK imprisonment of pregnant women. Apparently, 2 babies during birth after birth they were born in prison. Over the last few years, and these 2 babies died because of a lack of, it says, child care and a lack of care during the pregnancy and during the birth. And so these protests, which make perfect sense, are saying, you know, these pregnant women in custody, in prison, they need proper care and proper access.
We actually have a photograph of a baby protesting. In fact, there it is. There is an actual baby wearing what was described in the paper as a diminutive placard.
Their mothers gave birth without medical assistance at HMP Bronzefield in October 2019 and HMP Style in 2020. I guess there's 10 or 11 prisons in the UK that are women's-only prisons, and they are mostly non-violent, and the women who are staying in them mostly are non-violent offenders. So they're looking for a way for these women to... And the pregnancy numbers and birth numbers in prisons have gone up.
I mean, you can easily imagine, if you want to imagine, some quite Dickensian circumstances, but this can't be the first time this has been raised. I would imagine these are not prisons as we know it. This mustn't look like porridge, surely, with women in cages with their babies.
It's hard to say something because they're so removed from public scrutiny. It's strange.
It seems extraordinary that women would give birth in prison at all.
67 in 2018 to 19. It's gone up since 2013, by 24 since 2013-14. So I guess they have access, obviously, to partners and whatever happens. And again, they're on short terms because mostly non-violent.
Things,
yeah.
What do you think, Nick?
Well, I only had 2 comments. One is that you said it was a baby protest, and The Guardian's written 50 babies accompanied by their parents have gathered outside Parliament. So The Guardian seems to be lending autonomy to babies.
It's a lot of agency to the babies.
Exactly. Perhaps another attempt by the left to lower the voting age. But that I did know, of course, it's very unfair. But they're sort of arguing that you shouldn't be able to be pregnant in prison. You shouldn't put a pregnant woman in prison. And of course, it is terrible because it traumatises a baby who's innocent. But the only downside is surely if you were convicted, then you could get pregnant deliberately to avoid prison.
Yeah.
Although we do need to get the birth rates up. So maybe
maybe that's the way to do it. Yeah. I would like more information on it really to know whether these women did get pregnant between being caught, being sentenced, or what it was.
Well, my stepsister Patty asked my husband and I if we wanted to borrow her womb.
Right.
Because she's gone to prison, and she thinks if she gets pregnant while in prison, that they'll give her own cell.
Wow.
And
there's a novel in that.
That's her strategy.
Yeah. So where are you going with that?
Well, it's complicated because she's married, and obviously he's not in prison with her. And she went to prison because she backed up over a neighbor's child while on a beer run during the Super Bowl. So there's that.
Doesn't sound like an ideal start in life, to be honest, Scott.
Yeah.
I think you've probably got
not the best mother on
wider
earth.
range of
Find a better womb, I think.
Nick, price of the brown stuff is going up. I imagine it depends which dealer you go to, but...
Yeah, we've covered this type of story very much before. It's Cadburys Shrink iconic dairy milk bars as inflation bites, but price stays the same. So this is a classic example of shrinkflation.
Shrinkflation.
Whereby you pay the same, the bar gets smaller and smaller. Eventually, the dairy milk is just a spray. The shopkeeper sprays, and you walk through it and get a whiff. You just get a frisson of chocolate.
It's no longer a glass and a half of dairy milk.
Right, it's a thimble, I believe. It keeps getting smaller. In 2012, a 49-gram bar was reduced to 45 grams, but the price remained at 59p. So 1 year earlier, the 140-gram chocolate bar was reduced to 120. It keeps getting smaller.
I remembered that, actually. I was eating chocolate then, and I remember going to the store after I
smaller as you ate it.
Yeah, I remember, it did. It shrunk. No, I remember feeling like this feels smaller, and I've had things on my hands where I felt
they do occasionally, though, have absolutely absurdly cheaply priced bars of chocolate, and they're near the tills in certain well-known sort of news agents and what have you. And they try and press them on you. I mean, I think it's disgraceful. If you know what I mean.
Like a Freddo.
Railway stations, they're like, you go up there with the newspaper or something, and would you like a bar of chocolate? So it's on promotion.
We'd like some crisps and a bar of chocolate.
Yeah. Can we get you right onto the path to diabetes?
I'm sure it works for them.
Do you think they change it based on which paper? Like if you get the Sun, you get Freddo.
Absolutely.
Telegraph
kind of special brew to go with. I mean, this has been going on. We've talked about this before, how sweets definitely get smaller as you get older.
Maybe that's better.
That's a way to do it. But I think it probably is. It's a bit like the opposite that happens to cars, right?
Yeah.
Like a 3 Series BMW, that used to be a runaround. Now that's a full-size family saloon. Ford Fiesta, again, used to be a tiny little hatchback just for doing a bit of shopping in. Nowadays, that could be a family
car. When I was a kid, ice cream would come in huge tubs, and we'd be, chasing each other around the room after eating them. My brothers and I beating the heck out of each other.
Exactly.
So,
these things change the whole time. I think we can probably ride this one out. Anyway, part 1 is over. After the adverts, we will be discussing the effect social media has on girls, the effect the cost of living crisis is having on oligarchs, and the effect AI is going to have on the NHS waiting times, and indeed the effect saying the word effect repeatedly has on my diction. See you in about 2 minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. I'm joined by Scott Capurro and Nick Dixon. We have, predictably enough, spent the ad break going back over the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident. We have some really serious views about Mr. Smith's marriage, but I'm not going to share those online. We've done that story. Scott, more nasty innuendo and smears now about Daddy Donald Trump.
Pinkett Smith ran a Scientology school for children. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, she's a lunatic. So, apparently, it's likely, according to a judge in the U.S., that Trump has committed felonies around the Capitol attack, and his lawyers' emails that were being swapped between Trump and Trump's team and his own lawyer about how to plan the January 6th insurrection.
On the day itself?
And weeks leading up to it, apparently.
Okay.
And how to basically overthrow
the
this
United
whole
States
election.
government. Yeah.
And create a sort of, I guess you would call it an illegal overtaking of a government that had been elected properly.
Yeah.
All the emails are there, and the judge has said, look, we need those emails revealed to us in the
So he
overturn
hasn't
of
seen them.
2020
He suspects that this is the case based on his, his experience of previous
on the
insurrections?
Well,
it's a little bit speculative.
Yeah, exactly.
It's among the emails that ordered Eastman, the lawyer, to turn over include messages forwarded to him by Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, recommending that Mike Pence, the then vice president, overturn the 2020 election results and laid out a day-by-day plan of action leading up to January 6th. So,
I'm taking it with a pinch of salt because he's saying it's likely, but we don't know. And we've just had we had a 2-year Russia hoax, which came to nothing. We had the 2 failed impeachments. So I would take this with a big pinch of salt until we actually know more. I'd like to know what's on Hunter Biden's laptop, although I wouldn't like to see what's on it because I'd probably never recover.
We do seem to have moved, one way or another, into a new era, don't we, in the last 4 years, in which there is a serious attempt on both sides, but I think on balance, the left are trying to do it more to the right than the other way round, to delegitimise their very presence as opposition, to suggest that they're not fit for election, not fit for government. The attempt to make
they
January
tried to organise
6th,
a coup. So
well, this is the question. If they tried to organise a coup, if they did try to organise a coup, that would be valid.
And we'll only know
if on the other hand, what they tried to organise was a protest, which, I mean, there is, I think, legitimate suspicion that the police were withdrawn from the security of the Capitol, which allowed the protesters to get in there, which allowed it to get out of hand to a far greater degree than it might otherwise have done in order to be able to present that as
after Trump told them to go get Pence. That's what he said to the seething, rowdy crowd.
If Republicans are far more organised than Democrats. If they tried to organise a coup, they would do it.
I think they would probably have managed it if they really expected to get in there.
It wouldn't have been 12 blokes in hats.
I think,
but we have moved into an interesting era in that respect.
But I think what's revealed by all this too is more difficult to organise a coup than I think Trump thought. And I think Trump thought
he had a man with horns.
Do you seriously think he was trying to organise a coup? That Trump, but that is so absurd. That Trump was trying to organise.
I don't think it's out of his realm.
His rhetoric is a bit sloppy sometimes, but the idea that he was trying to organise a coup, he's still trying to come back and be president. I mean,
he had called various governors and said, "Find me these votes. Do what you can. These votes are incorrect." They have created this whole malaise around the idea that there's election fraud in the US when none has been proven. And Trump is designing his re-election campaign based on that. So yes, I think in his mind, a coup would have been appropriate, actually.
Democrats have misused the intelligence agencies on this Russia hoax, which has wasted loads of money and time for 2 years. What about that?
Well, we need to see what's going on with the emails before we can talk about this anymore, I guess.
There was definitely, I mean, as an example, there was definitely an organised and successful attempt to keep Hunter Biden's laptop out of the news in the build-up to the election. That definitely
New York Post
happened.
was taken down from Twitter with the story.
Yeah. So that kind of thing is going on, and the bulk of the American media do seem to be behind it.
But the idea
they
that
took the actual president off Twitter.
But the idea that
what about that seemed important to me.
But who's decided the New York Post is left wing? I've never thought of them that way. They're very centrist. I don't think
New York
left or
Post?
right. I mean, the New York Times is left wing. It's not. It's not.
Well, I
left
don't
or
mean
right.
left wing. They're Democrat, aren't they?
They refer to the ISIS guy as an austere scholar.
They restricted the access of the LGBT community to the front pages for the last 4 decades. They actually wouldn't review a lot of Gore Vidal's books until the 90s.
Well, they're establishment
badly.
Well,
I mean,
interesting times. From Tuesday's Times, Keir Starmer making strange allegations about the subtext of the royals riding around in Land Rovers. Nick, this feels reassuringly trivial.
Yeah, that would be a good way of describing it. Keir Starmer questions royal tour imagery that harked of the past. So Starmer, in his typically milquetoast way, has deemed it a bit odd, and he said it's a difficult one. I mean, he really hasn't said anything of substance. So he's saying that perhaps they shouldn't have harked back to the past with the imagery since they're trying to move to the future. But then again, he
means smacked of the past.
Smacked
you
of the
don't
past.
hark of the past.
Right.
You hark back to the past.
Right. I see. Well, you should pick him up on that, Simon. I mean, and he
just means listen, doesn't
also, he doesn't even know what a woman is, so you've got a lot to go on. But he had some very mild complaints. But so. And then it's interesting because William, to me, he's less woke than Harry, but he's trying to be a little bit woke. He's
Starmer.
William, because
sorry.
Prince William has suggested that he wants to, because it's part of the story, that he wants to scrap the old never complain, never explain thing, which I think is a great idea. Never complain, never explain. We want to keep that. Comes from Disraeli.
Philip, all right.
And and it's. That, to me, that's what, I mean, to me, Will Smith should have followed that. I mean, that's a good thing you want to follow. So I don't agree with William getting rid of that. But it's a bit of a non-story. It's basically, Starmer was interviewed about Prince William, and he said almost nothing.
What he said, as far as I understand it, is that some of William's rhetoric seemed to be modernist, looking forward to a renegotiated settlement, the idea of the Commonwealth and everything would be
Wasn't
similar.
the car they were driving in
but
that
they
he
drove
complained
around in a car that just was reminiscent, physically reminiscent of the one that the Queen and Prince Philip drove around in 60 years
I know
ago.
they're seated in the back
And
being
it is,
driven.
but
right.
then that's probably like a standard vehicle for driving around in that part of the world, is it?
Why not? Why shouldn't William be keep some traditions going? I mean, isn't that part of what the royal family's
I tend
about?
to agree. Tuesday's Guardian, Scott, social media, women hit hardest or soonest on this occasion?
Apparently, psychologists, and this is no surprise probably to parents, psychologists
I have a
are
theory
saying,
about this.
Well, that young women are the most affected by spending too much time on social media. Girls aged between 11 and 13 become most vulnerable.
But when you read into it, what it actually says is girls at that age are most vulnerable at that age. A few years later, boys become most
between
most
14
vulnerable.
and 15, you're right.
And you know why? Having had a girl and a boy in the house, I'll tell you exactly why. Because girls hit puberty about
Of course
2 years
they do.
earlier.
Yeah.
than
I think
boys.
that's what most people assume.
Yeah.
And I think that the well-being of people kind of increases as they get older, except it says at the age of 19, something's happening at that time too. Maybe it's when most people are leaving the home and taking on responsibilities they're not accustomed to. But it does say that they interviewed and researched about 84,000 UK individuals ages between 10 and 80 for the Understanding Society Project and the Millennium Cohort Study.
Yeah.
And what they found was that older people aren't really affected so much by social media.
Yeah.
I guess it's because criticism kind of slides off our backs. But I can't imagine being
Well, you get
11
used
and 13
to the fact that
and
other
14.
people have better lives and it doesn't always stack, the
it's
bigger the
it's
front,
a
the bigger the
competition
back and all that.
You're saying the
I was saying this earlier, just having a chat, but without, to be as brief about it as possible, I found myself in a large WhatsApp group, a big joint chat now with about 30 or 40 people in it that I don't really know that well. And it's the first time that I've ever been on a group chat where they all seem to be skiing all the time or enjoying barbecues or going to see Genesis live at the O2 or something. And it actually is starting to get me down a bit. I'd never had that before. Most of my mates that I have WhatsApp group chats with, we complain about the weather, we complain about Ukraine, we complain about, whether it's Trump or Biden or whatever, but we just complain.
You complain,
Yeah, and maybe we go, there's a photograph of me walking the dog. If the sun's there, it's
yeah.
kind of going, hey guys, I made it as far as the park.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. Suddenly I'm in this group, it feels more like the
Well,
thing
him
that
knowing
Tim
Will
Akers
Smith
had.
has made me die inside,
Yeah.
I have to
That's
say.
the problem with joining the croquet WhatsApp group. Isn't it? when I was, I do worry about these kids because when I was at school, you could only be insulted and abused until around 3:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So now with social media, it's all the time. So
extended, yeah.
it is very worrying. On the plus side, you can now become famous for just playing FIFA or being on Twitch or something. So it's the double-edged sword of social
I
media.
don't know. My sister continued the insults after school. Very wee hours
Follow
in the
you
morning.
home.
Oh God. To think
My
she-
daughter, I have to say, 17, she'll be 18 in a couple of weeks' time. She's navigated social media particularly well. I do occasionally have a look at her Instagram feed. I'm allowed. There may be a second
Is it
Instagram
brutal?
feed. I'm not allowed to.
Are you shocked?
They're all just constantly going, oh, babe, you look gorgeous, babe. It's so lovely. I think, God, I wish I had one.
It's stunning. No matter where we go in the world, my husband and I, whether we're in Israel or Russia or wherever we are, or South America, we see girls kind of the same age, around 13 or 14, posing with that face, with kind of very similar makeup group. I don't know, makeup
occasionally
palette on.
completely unacceptable.
It's just for one another, really.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I think we are in danger of pathologizing a perfectly normal sort of trajectory. Anyway, not sure if I've understood this story correctly. Mum apologises for not running Insulate Britain
God, I love this
protesters
story.
over sufficiently. Is it?
Yeah, this is Range Rover mum admits nudging Insulate Britain protesters with a 4x4.
Instead of flattening her like a crepe Suzette, which is what we were all hoping for.
Well, yeah, she's not referring to the Sage-esque nudge unit. She means essentially running someone over. But she gave him a little nudge, and she's called Cheryllin Speed, which is funny in itself, but might be spied. But I like the idea that it's Speed. But she's been hailed as a hero because, of course, she's it's Insulate
because
Britain.
people despise you. We've got a video we can have a look at.
Oh,
We can
good.
talk over it, but I think
I don't
there's a
have
bit
to
of a
describe
video.
it. Here we go.
Look at that.
That
That is
11 years, she's yelling, I've got an 11-year-old son, he's got to get to school.
Daughter.
Nudge
Oh, no,
her.
son, you're right.
Nudge her.
No, and then we can't.
Nudge
she's
her
saying
over. Nudge
ow.
her. Nudge.
Oh, we've
She
all
says
been
ow about 5 times.
Yeah.
Nudge her.
Yeah.
There it is.
I mean, I've been on the street in San Francisco in my Honda, this is 20 years ago, and what appeared to be someone not at work, probably a homeless gentleman, was in my way, and he wouldn't get out of the way, and I had a show to get to, so I drove over his foot.
Yeah.
I kind of had to.
Homeless gentleman, though. You speak of him very kindly,
Yeah,
even
well,
as you...
What's interesting about this, apart from the brilliant clip, is that the Insulate Britain have said they stand with Cheryllin. They've taken the eccentric but quite smart position of not having a go at the mum because everyone likes the mum. So for PR reasons, perhaps, they've instead switched it to the government. They've said Cheryllin's prosecution is yet another example of the state acting against our interests. A single mother is caught up in the frustration and delay caused by our government's treasonous inaction.
Wow.
And then she is prosecuted for it. So it's an extraordinary position.
I'm quite impressed by that. That's real.
They've
like,
thrown those two
political
women into the
judo,
car,
that.
they have. Yeah, they're on two protesters, yeah.
Now, a new category of special pleading, and this sounds like a rare bird, the sanctioned oligarch who can no longer afford to eat in his favourite restaurant or something.
Mikhail Fridman, Fridman, he says that because of the freezes on his income and on his net worth, which is 2.3 billion or 9.4 billion pounds, he's ranked the 164th richest man in the world by Forbes magazine, sanctioned by the UK where he lives. He says he can't afford to go out to dinner or to buy groceries or the taxi to go buy groceries or to invite his friends out to dinner, which is what he used to doing. And he may not be able to maintain his 64 million pound home any longer, which he bought a few years ago. And he's begging the government for an allowance. Please give me a bit of money so I can eat.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the ultimate benefits scrounger. He'd get absolutely roasted on Question Time, wouldn't he?
If it sounds more like a teenager who's been grounded, who's like, can I at least have my friends over? Well, then can I at least have Wi-Fi? And it's like nothing.
He claims that the sanctions in the West against Russian billionaires are populist, but I like populism a little bit sometimes. It's good because it kind of answers a lot of people's desires, including voters. And I think that he thinks that the freezes on his money are idiotic, that they won't have any effect on what's going on, that he lives in the UK for a reason, and that is because he doesn't respect, I think really was what he's saying, what's going on with the Russian government, and there's nothing he can do, and it's not going to have any effect if he starves to death.
Well, it's very hard for us to say whether he's come by those billions through legitimate hard work.
None of our business.
Can he invest in them, or whether he has,
What do
What do you think? I was going to say, if Scott likes populism, are you voting Trump in 2024?
I'm thinking about it. I want to be in a winning team for a change.
OK, part 2 is at an end. Coming up is the Declaration of Independence. It gets a trigger warning. A new sandwich has just dropped, and a bat cave Scott wishes he could visit.
Oh, what?
It's a little bit salacious, that
Very
one. We'll
personal.
see you after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, and I'm joined by Scott Capurro and Nick Dixon. So, from Tuesday's Metro, is this the news Donald Trump has been waiting to hear, Nick?
Right, this is Elon Musk wants to create his own social media platform. World's richest man is giving serious thought to building a new social media platform. Now, if you're on Twitter, you may have seen he did this poll around free speech and whether people believe Twitter adhered to the principles of free speech, and 70% of people voted no. I don't know who the 30% were that voted yes, just woke blue tick people presumably, because they actually banned the president, which would seem to me a little anti-free speech, but who am I, just a mere layman. But and Musk makes the argument many people make. Now, some people quite disingenuously will say, oh, Twitter's it's a publisher, it's a private company, whatever. Musk has said here, given that Twitter serves as a de facto public town square, which it does, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy, so he wants to start his own one. Many people have just said he should buy Twitter, which is a quicker way of doing it. But yeah, I would love to see this. I like a lot of the other ones. I like Getter, which is one I'm on, which I'm verified on that one, unlike Twitter. And the challenge is to make a truly neutral social media platform, because obviously the lefties don't tend to flock to the new ones because they're not the ones being banned.
No, this is the problem. You're absolutely right. With Getter, there was Parler as well, wasn't there? There's Gab, and they have all quickly developed a reputation as being like a place that extreme right-wing, they're like Argentina after the war, basically. Whereas I absolutely agree with you. There have been a number, there's been some accounts that I used to enjoy, but they were mischievous, and I could see why they had transgressed. But there have been other accounts that I genuinely think were perfectly legitimate expressions of opinion. And
Babylon B was a recent one.
Oh, that was disgraceful that they took them out. Absolutely disgraceful. Do you know Babylon B?
They were on the show last night with Andrew that we did here.
They are really, I think
he's
that's
a great
really
interview,
awful.
That guy, yeah.
So I agree, and I do think actually that buying Twitter would be the best way to do it, because that already has the benefit of having the established network. But what do you think?
Well, there's so many other forms of social media, like you said. There's so much access to information. I think Twitter's just one, and I'm surprised Twitter's still around. Have they shown profit yet? In San Francisco, my flat is quite close to the building, which has been emptied out. They don't rent it anymore.
Oh, really?
There's no one on the top floor sitting in the sun any longer.
You think it's running on empty?
I'm really stunned that it's still around, to be honest with you.
I do agree with you that it doesn't monetize terribly well. But then on the other hand, I cannot bear Facebook. The reason it's still around, I think, is a lot of people still use it.
Yeah, people
my age. It runs quite cheaply, but it would be good to see somewhere. There is a very different dynamic in play on Twitter to what there is on Facebook. And on Facebook, you tend to follow people you know and family and friends, and you're all embarrassed about your the aunts and the uncles and all the rest of it. Whereas Twitter, I feel I have access to some of the most extraordinary, people I've ever encountered in my life, and some of them actually respond and listen to me and so on. It's an empowering sensation.
And that's something you really miss. I like Getter, but you can't really quote tweet because the people aren't there. So it's the conversation on Twitter. It's very hard to recreate anywhere else.
Oh, I wish Elon Musk well. I like him, and he responded to one of my tweets once. Do you know that?
Yeah, that's what this is about.
Engaged.
It's the man crush. I could feel it.
Well, I kind of quoted one of his, and he acknowledged it. It was quite a cool little Anyway. About Grover Gardner, an Audible narrator. Tuesday's Times next, and our old friend Al. Is there nothing he can't do, Scott?
There's a response by the NHS to their waiting lists. They've been pressured the last 2 years, haven't they?
Yeah.
Their response is to come up with this sort of system that can predict the number of patients each hospital can expect in the next few days.
Yeah.
So they can prepare the number of beds they'll need, the staff they'll need, and if it's going to be a quiet day, predictably, with this system, then they can send staff elsewhere where they're needed, or they can do other tasks while the hospital's quiet itself.
And do you know what kind of data they are analysing in order to come up with these forecasts?
NHS is with a group called Faculty, and like you said, an AI or AL company is being sent to trust it. It is a sophisticated modelling technique where I did circle, and they harness the technologies like A&E forecasting tools to actually predict activity. I'm sure it's some sort of algorithm.
Be good to know what they're using. I mean, they are extraordinarily sophisticated and they are very clever. There are famous stories, aren't there, even in the private sector ones, of people who get marketing materials concerning pregnancy products before they know they're pregnant themselves. The supermarket has identified it from their shopping habits. I think they probably can spot when people are when there's about
I was just saying, I look forward to clapping for the AI. That's all.
I think that they're looking, it says here, at analytical data involving 111 calls and the weather.
The weather.
Into account,
Oh, they're looking at the weather.
Right.
I think people's going to.
It's such an obvious thing to analyse, but it makes sense in a way.
Well, I listen. I think it's all good that they, you've got limited resources. It's always good to try and use them as best as possible, isn't it? Nick, not going to lie. This next story from Tuesday's Mail. I can see the appeal of this.
Yeah. Chinese man has lived in an airport for 14 years so he can get away from his family plus smoke and drink as much as he wants.
I mean, we've all had a nice early drink in an airport lounge.
Yeah, I know. So it's a bit like, many people have compared it to The Terminal. It's a bit like that movie Tokyo Sonata, because it was a man who was sacked from his job and just pretended he hadn't been and carried on. So that's very much what happened here. He's not returning home. It's very simple. He doesn't want to quit drinking and smoking. It's quite funny. My family told me if I wanted to stay, I had to quit smoking and drinking. If I couldn't do that, I had to give them all my monthly government allowance. But then how would I buy my cigarettes and alcohol? So, it's a brilliant logic. He stays with Terminal 2 mainly, which is the warmest, but he sometimes visits Terminal 3. And so basically he had a job in an internal combustion engine factory, but he was sacked for being too old.
I know.
And they've said that he's harmless, except for being a loud drunk. And they said
I think a loud drunk in an airport terminal is harmless. That's actually quite a bad thing to have.
He gets quite angry though when they try to move.
That's my favourite quote.
Right.
Said he'd been encouraged to leave a few times, but every time he mentioned it, he was drunk and lost his temper.
Have you ever lived in a liminal space, Scott?
I lived in I was forced to share a room in my first year of university.
Yeah.
With a student who had never had any experience with women and kept asking me. Consulting me, trying to get.
Read the room.
But have you? I mean, I've stayed for a night or two in a service station in France.
Right.
There used to be a place called Relais Bourgogne. It was about halfway down the Autoroute du Soleil on the way to Nice and Marseille.
Well, you say it sounds so
But I was hitchhiking, and you wait for the right lift, so you don't want to just pick up and get a couple of 100 miles.
Right. Yeah.
So there are a lot of truck drivers came through there. So I stayed there a couple of days. I know what it's like to live in places like that. You settle in, it's all right.
Well,
were you a loud drunk?
Yeah.
I was a very quiet drunk because I didn't want to get kicked out.
But have you ever played a venue where they said, your accommodation is upstairs, and you go up and you open the sofa mattress thing and there's blood stains on it, and then there's a kiddie box in the corner.
Remember the hyena in Newcastle? That was one
with
like
mold
that.
on the walls.
And the pillows were all like loose foam.
I made them put me in a hotel. Last time I played
a good transatlantic row here. This is from the Times, Scott. We're going to disagree over this one, I would imagine.
Well, there's a trigger warning now placed on the Declaration of Independence. Apparently, if you go to read the Declaration, there is a trigger warning that states, be careful. Because when you see this, you might read something that offends you. There might be something here that's outdated and biased. And that's because one example is that when they talk about George III is mentioned as someone who is cruel and inhuman.
Well, when I read this story, there's a guy called Andrew Roberts, who's a very well-established British historian. He's written about Napoleon and Churchill, among others. And he's, I would say, right of centre. He has said that there are trigger warnings on the Declaration of Independence, but they're there. The intention is there because it speaks meanly about Native Americans.
It does. It calls them Indian. It says they're merciless Indian savages.
Yes.
And that is meant to be seen as something that's,
bad
of course,
thing.
not... Well, yeah. And, of course, it's not current. If you read the Declaration, you know it was written in the 1770s.
But then Roberts says, actually, there is some truth to it, because he says it's actually despicable the way it describes the British troops and George III.
That's what he meant. He said it's unfavourable to Britain.
Yes.
And it's inaccurate
Well,
historically.
read a little bit out. Have you got it in there? There's a little bit which he discovered about descriptions.
Yes, he says that the Declaration brands the monarch, Britain's longest-serving male king, as a tyrant who has, quote, plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people, which is actually a quote that he's jumbled that belonged to...
but he did some bad things too.
He did do some bad things. But, yes, he says that George transported large armies of foreign mercenaries.
Yeah.
And in Robert's biography that utilizes 2,000 papers in the Royal Collection, he says that this statement about George III is biased, outdated, and again.
What do you think, Nick?
Well, I have many thoughts. I'm triggered by the attack on our king, firstly.
Quite
and this is a trigger warning, and that warns that it warns that it's outdated, biased, and offensive. At least they use biased correctly, because we've got this bizarre thing now where people say bias when they mean biased, because they don't know the difference between a noun and adjective. Wanting to get that in there, very important. But it just shows a sort of total loss of confidence in one's own culture. This time in the US, happens here a lot as well. The US just feels very weak at the moment. You've got Biden, who's obviously very weak, and I think that's dangerous for the world. Although I know Scott wants to break up the union, although thankfully he doesn't have the power to do that.
Maybe Scotland could go over and join. We could get like Wyoming and Kansas and...
Well, I feel like the US is too large a country. It should be split up into 5 sections.
I do think it's interesting, though, just to return briefly to the story itself, that George III is now being reappraised. Andrew Roberts, significant historian. It is quite interesting when these people are. I mean, famously, he was supposed to be mad, right? The madness of King George. He was supposed to be useless and helpless.
Arguably, there's an argument to be made for the fact that the British Empire started to decline when they gave up the US.
Yeah.
Around that time, long before the
I don't think so. No, we had the Industrial Revolution after that. We cut you loose and then we stormed ahead.
But it might have been a bit more effective if you had everything that the US could have offered. But
there were some resources we could have used. I can't believe this story has been relegated all the way down the list. This is the greatest outrage I've heard for some time, Nick.
Yeah. Well, Devon Pub reaps Twitter storm after adding plough persons to menu. They changed the name of Plowman to plough person, and they got a lot of heat. I mean, you reap what you plough. So thank you very much. It's okay. It's fine. You're the brains of this operation. I've been told on Twitter.
You're the pretty one.
I'm just making up numbers. I wasn't. So they changed it to plough persons, which was a nod to the local women farmers, if they call that, who also plough. It says here, women plough too, which is a possible T-shirt. But it was changed. But now he's been attacked for being woke. Someone has pointed out here, yes, there are lots of women farmers today, and I salute them, but stop changing the past. Stop changing the past, guys.
It's not the past.
But also,
the Plowman's Lunch is it was an example. They actually made a TV drama about this, I think. It was a famous example of a retroactively introduced term in order to lend authenticity to a cheese-based lunch.
Right.
It's just a lunch and a pickled onion and a lump of cheese and a bit of bread. It was called a Plowman's Lunch in about 1974 or something, and everyone, ooh, that's...
OK. Well, I knew you'd have the facts, so I didn't worry about that. Most people, someone has written, most people are sick to death of this ridiculous woke cancel culture. Not really. I mean, I'm someone who always is very against cancel culture. This is not the best example of
quite
cancel
charming,
culture.
I think, but it would have to be a different cheese. I think it would have to be a slightly, maybe like a dolce latte or something.
Something more kick to it.
And now the guy doesn't know what to do, the landlord, because he doesn't know whether to change it back or not. And this is the problem when you mess with the past. But my favourite bit is someone else questioned, well, why should there be any gender things on the menu? What about Mama's chocolate mousse? And the landlord explained it's because it's his mum's recipe. So it's a nightmare.
You know, the thing is, when people say cancel, woke and all, you know, names for things change all the time. Identifiers for communities change, countries change their names.
Yes.
Street changes.
Chad
I'm against
used
it
to
all.
exist at all. all, did it? Now it's,
I like it.
both,
I think
it's
it's why
a masculine man and a Central African Republic.
but that's why the language is sustained for so long, because it's so flexible.
It's flexible. I don't think I'd eat a plough person's lunch, though. It does it just sort of feels like it wouldn't have quite as much sort of pickly zing to it somehow, does it?
There's a sour taste in your...
Caves for bats to speed date. I thought all animals speed date, don't they? Apparently, the point. I think we're the only ones who don't.
I think we noticed the caves, especially because the National Trust has acquired this Dorset bat cave.
Right.
That's really, really famous because it attracts a very rare greater horseshoe bat.
Nice.
And they fly in there and they meet each other and they bang around and then they fly out.
Yeah.
And there's other bats in there. It's a bit of a party. David Brown, the National Trust ecologist for the area, said, effectively, when the bats arrive, it's a big party and we want to leave them alone to do what they want.
So is this news or has this just been brought to our attention? Is anything happened?
15 species of bats have been recorded on this western farm site.
That's great.
And I think the bats sweep into 3 cliff caves from the seaside. And it must be very exciting to see. It must be beautiful at night, too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, a swarm of bats is not beautiful, is it?
At night it's gorgeous.
Is it? I like 1 or 2 bats swooping over a swimming pool, scooping up the mosquitoes.
I grew up with bats so it's not great. In the country, can I just say that
bats in our garage.
It's fascinating that bats go speed dating. It doesn't say, though, if they have wingmen. Am I right?
Right.
On.
Well done.
My mic's...
Hello,
You hated the last one, so I thought I'll just double down.
I didn't hate it. I just ignored it.
Do you
Like
think
a
they
bat
shine
swing.
a thing onto the underside of clouds to attract the bats to come in? Do you think they do
Nice.
that? They must want to enjoy themselves like on that level, mustn't they?
Where are the robins when you need them?
Next is immortality, but without my body. So what are the downsides, Nick?
Yeah, well, good question. Humans could upload their brains to a metaverse to live longer, expert claims. Eternal life could be within our grasp. This is a Russian billionaire, Dmitry Itskov, part of the 2045 initiative. So this is the whole kind of debate around transhumanism. If you've seen the movie Chappie, they try and upload consciousness. Of course, it's very hard to upload consciousness since no one really knows what it is. And it depends which side you're on of the transhumanism debate. Some people are very against it, like the American philosopher Alex Jones, but some people are very in favour of it. I'm sort of more with the Aubrey de Grey type people who want to combat ageing through attacking the damage done to the cells. He sees aging as a kind of unnecessary ailment.
So we can extend a healthy lifespan, but maybe 120 years.
Right. Well, he claims the first person who lived to 1,000 has already been born. And he thinks you can attack it sort of biomedically. Other people want to do this uploading of the conscious, but as people like Jordan Peterson will say, it's very hard for AI to even recognise how to manoeuvre through an
So
environment.
what would living but not embodied feel like? I can't feel any excitement about
that. You know, when they go to those strange
know?
planets and there's someone speaking from behind a wall.
Yeah.
Just a glowing tone.
We've never really felt that very applied.
And they always want to take form of the humans, don't they? They always want to take over human body. I mean, I know this is sci-fi.
And somebody said years ago, and I think rightly,
COVID.
you know, people want to live forever. They can't work out what to do with a Sunday afternoon, you know, most of the time. I think
it's living forever.
I'm torn, 'cause I do want to live
enriching the
forever.
life that we have seems like a more worthwhile plan.
I want to live forever, but I'm against this transhumanism stuff politically, so I'm sort of in the middle.
We've
got heaven anyway.
I want to look good while I'm living it, though. How good can you look at 100?
Oh man, you look great for 70. Is it
You're very
68?
sweet. That's very
I can't
nice
remember.
of you to say. I can't imagine.
You're so brave with colour. That's why.
That's a nice way of saying it. Thanks for that. Yeah, I just worry that, you know, at some point we're going to be, you know, a couple hundred years old, wondering where all our dead friends are. And I mean, you know, what do you do with your time when no one's talking to you anymore? When you're that old, I think people are a bit.
They would be uploaded
Maybe just
as well.
living with your memories. A
You'd
sort
all be in
of
a kind of
Proustian upload. That would be okay. Just a smell of
quite expensive
almond
though.
cakes.
Never going afford it.
It's kind of like an infinite version of your WhatsApp group, Simon. Everyone will be uploaded forever talking about their skiing trip.
Croquette for the rest
Folks,
of our...
that's it for us for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. My guests have been Nick and Scott. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will be away tomorrow until Wednesday. I think Dominic Frisby should be here. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 for another edition of Headliners. Thank you. Good night.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate